Hello, it's good to be with you. This video is going to be part two to my part one Edgar Fouche TR-3B flying triangle. So this is going to be a part two here. This video is going to be a little bit longer. There's quite a bit of text in here. There's a lot of reading in here. I generally don't like to go down that road, but for historical purposes, I thought we'd get this thing down on paper. Let's get it down on video so that we can come back to it later. I want to get everything all in this part two, so it'll be a little bit longer. So let's go ahead and continue where we left off on part one. What other top secret aircraft have been flight tested at Area 51? And let's continue on here. So what you're looking at here is a letter from John Andrews to Ben Rich dated 14 August 1981. I mean, think about how long ago this is. This is a long time ago. Now, John Andrews was the senior project design engineer Testers Model Corporation. A gentleman, the highest quality that you can find. This guy was the best of the best. If it wasn't for John Andrews, we would not have the secret aircraft research community. He was the one who started all of this. So let me just read this here. It says, Ben Rich, your crew responsible for two very strange birds leaving at dawn, just at first light from George Air Force Base. One white, one gray, said to be very Lippish-like. Good acceleration, good climb. Don't loiter around George and not seen for rest of day. Attached sketch may or may not be accurate. Could it be code 85 birds might be into a base as relatively open as George Air Force Base? Could it be that would be that the last place eyes from other side would look for them? Could it be that's why they are there? So here's a case where we've got, it looks like two aircraft taking off from George, which probably could be later on tested at Groom Lake, but absolutely. So off to the left, you've got John's sketch per the eyewitness testimony. So let me go to the next drawing here. And here you see what these things actually look like in flight. So this would be the pair. Now take a look at the configuration. You've got this blended wing configuration, the wing root to fuselage joint. You've got air intakes up on the top, so you're reducing your radar cross signature. You've blended this in. Now, one thing that would show up is the vertical stabilizer. That absolutely would show up. Let's go on to the next one here. So new black aircraft observed, sighted August 4th, 1999, Rachel, Nevada. So this is right around Area 51. And I'm just going to go over the bullet items here. Craft flew parallel to Highway 375. Seen by 8 eyewitnesses at 10:30 a.m. Craft was followed closely by a T-38 from behind and to the left. The aircraft was described as being coal black in color with a length of 150 to 180 feet. The craft was observed for 8 minutes at an altitude of 3,000 to 4,000 feet. So this is what their witnesses are reporting here. So it is known as the big F-117. It appears there's something out there lurking in the shadows that might be called the big F-117, much larger than our traditional stealth fighter. Let's continue on here. Another aircraft that's allegedly been tested at Area 51 is the so-called flying artichoke. So this is kind of orders of magnitude more stealthy, low radar cross-section than the original F-117. The entire trailing edge of this thing has this staggered or sawtooth trailing edge, even more so than the F-117. Let's continue on. Now, what evidence do we have of any of this for the flying artichoke? And we'll do a quick check-in here. Let's see here. Roger Murray. We have Terrain Earthlings. Alex, hello from Wisconsin. Crypto Alchemist. Roger Murray. Alex, Bird of Prey. Edgar Fouche called Jeremy Rise, alien scientist Dan Marshall, as helicopter ride to Area 51. Okay, let's continue. So let's go on here. The flying artichoke has been seen at Holloman Air Force Base and Air Force Plant 42. So reference is Popular Science, December 1994. That's where I'm getting this information. Now, they've got this somewhat simplistic top view looking down, and you've got these spires sticking out of the trailing edge of this craft. Very low radar cross, probably orders of magnitude lower RCS than the F-117. Let's continue on here. Letter to Ben Shermer from John Andrews, dated August 31st, 1984. It says, Dear Ben, sketches below are 85% correct for one of the stealth designs, also highly modified F-16s with stealth characteristics being flown from Edwards Air Force Base, North Base location. Okay, so here it is again, Edwards North Base location. Now take a look at the simplistic views kind of on the bottom. You've got a 3/4 right view, you've got a front view, then you've got a top view. So you've got almost like winglets coming up. You've got this blended fuselage. You've got air intakes on the forward section here. Let's go to the next slide here. And this is Rudy's drawing that gives you a real good idea what this thing looks like. Just did a great job at extrapolating the details. So single pilot, upward turn winglets. You've got air intakes on the upper side, so you're definitely going to reduce your radar cross signature. And then they probably got some type of coolant to reduce the thermal signature coming from the exhaust off the back of it. So this is drawing by Rudy. I want to give him credit. Here's Joel's full color rendering, and it's great, you know. So something is absolutely going on at Edwards North Base Complex. You can bank on it. Something is absolutely going on. Let's continue on. Super secret classified aircraft programs are test flown out of Edwards Air Force Base North Base Complex. So yes, it is correct. We've got an absolute large history of black aircraft programs at Edwards North Base Complex. Continue on here. Hangar at Edwards North Base Complex for storage of classified aircraft and other assets. So I wonder what could be lurking inside these old hangars at the North Base Complex. People in the know who work at the test site, Edwards Air Force Base, they know. Some of the people who have been cleared for these programs, they know what's going on here. Let's continue on. Now, the bar inside Area 51 called Sam's Place, this is something we already knew. It was here that Ed heard terms such as Lorentz forces, pulse detonation wave engines, cyclotron radiation, quantum flux transduction field generators, quasi-crystal energy lenses, and EPR quantum receivers. So this is the type of terminology that Edgar Fouche was hearing when he was in Sam's Place. And so there's absolutely some bar talk, there's some chatter, definitely engineers who are working on black programs, they shared some ideas, they shared some terminology, and this is what I want to highlight in this slide. Let's continue on here. After returning home from Area 51, Ed wrote down everything he saw and heard and touched in his personal logbook. So that's where he's getting this information to draw from the resources of what he heard inside Sam's Place and personal application at Edwards North Base Complex. Okay. Ed's NSA source mentioned to him details regarding an unmanned reconnaissance aerospace vehicle that was launched from a B-52. The craft was boosted into low Earth orbit. Ed's source stated that the craft was remotely piloted and that communications were made using the DOCL system at Groom Lake, the docile system, direct orbital communications link. So here's one instance of an unmanned classified aircraft that was air launched from a B-52. So there's got to be other programs going on at Area 51 that use this docile system as well. I wonder what those could be. Let's continue on. When seeking advice about writing the book from JAG lawyers, Ed was informed that as long as he didn't mention any specific names or provide details regarding programs he worked on directly, he could write about anything he wanted. So that's the underlying foundation of how Ed was able to write about these programs. This is the slide that describes it here. Okay, one of Ed's friends, who was an SR-71 pilot and stationed at Kadena Air Force Base, Okinawa, described a very interesting encounter in 1973. While flying back from North China Sea, he encountered a shadow over his cockpit and his avionics systems failed. He described seeing an oval-shaped craft approximately 300 feet across. For the next 10 minutes, the mysterious object moved around his aircraft. So here you've got another supersonic SR-71 traveling Mach 3.1, 2,100 miles an hour, high altitude, 1973. And then you've got this oval shape, 300-foot long shaped craft flying around the Blackbird. Who's got the technology? Who's building this? Is this extraterrestrial intelligence, or is this something man-made? It's a blue on blue situation. We don't want to discount that. We want to exhaust every conceivable man-made explanation before we jump on this ET bandwagon. Let's continue on here. In 1977, there was an F-15 crash that occurred within the Nellis Range. The aircraft flew into the side of a mountain during a routine functional check flight. The sergeant that worked for Ed recovered the heads-up display film canister, which showed a large oval object very close to the F-15. Just before the crash, the pilot contacted the Nellis Air Force Base control tower and stated the following, quote, "This extremely large thing is over my aircraft." 3 seconds later, they crashed. So this is from Ed's original slide presentation. Now, I wanted to see if I could verify this crash. I wanted to see, is there any paperwork or documentation that indicates that something like this actually occurred, or can we get any record of this craft whatsoever? So I started digging, and here's what I came up with. This is flightsafety.org, and they've got, here we have crash December 6, 1977 in Area 52, Tonopah Test Ranges near Nellis Air Force Base, Nevada during ACT mission. Both crew, Lieutenant Colonel David Jacobson, Commander 433rd Fighter Weapons Squadron, and Colonel William Hilton Walter III, Medical Doctor, Commander of the hospital at Nellis Air Force Base, were killed. So it checks out. There was such a crash of an F-15. And then if we're to believe what Ed is telling us, they saw something right over the canopy, and then 3 seconds later, they crashed and killed pilot and co-pilot and backseater. So something strange is going on with our military aircraft. Something is following, pacing, chasing our aircraft. Is it one of ours? Was this a mistake? Was this an accident? Or was this something else? At the very least, something is going on with our fighter pilots here. Nevada, the conspiracy state. The federal government is the second largest employer in the state. 18,000 military and 20,000 contractors. So yes, checks out. I mean, we all know about Groom Lake Area 51, but the amount of workers that are going on here and multiple locations, you got TTR, you've got Groom Lake, you've got Nellis Range, you've got 20,000 contractors. Absolutely, this is where we want to focus in on. Let's do a quick check-in here. Renee Cruz. Awesome machine. Imagine what is classified 2025. This is 50-year-old now. Yeah, absolutely. Covert clandestine. His highness. Dark Star requesting flyby. Great. Okay, let's continue on here. We'll continue on. According to Ed's NSA source, EG&G was responsible to the DOE and NSA for reacting to sightings of UFOs and crashed vehicles and recovery of alien artifacts. Well, we've known for a long time that EG&G was responsible for a lot of the day-to-day operations at Groom Lake. Now here, they're saying that they're responsible for reacting to sightings of UFOs and crash retrieval vehicles. Yeah, this is something new we haven't heard about. So we need to drill down further into what exactly EG&G was doing in these early 80s up to late 90s timeframe. This is something that needs to be looked at. Let's continue on here. Richmond Times Dispatch, March 7th, 1990. U.S. jet set record on last mission. So this is the closing down of the SR-71 program. Area 51 has the longest runway in the United States. You can land a space shuttle at either end and still have 5,000 feet in between. You need a long runway for an aircraft that takes off and lands at very high speed. So yeah, why would you need a runway that if you landed a space shuttle on opposite ends, you'd still have 5,000 feet in between? Obviously, we're talking about a high-speed Delta configuration, high landing speed. You wouldn't want that for operations at Groom Lake when you are operating such a craft here. Let's continue on. Now, this one's important. According to Ed's sources, 35% of the funding for President Reagan's Strategic Defense Initiative program was siphoned off and reallocated to fund a family of highly classified, top secret black budget aerospace programs. The program to develop these vehicles started in 1982. Okay, so this, I think, is a Rosetta Stone. What we're talking about here is one of these examples where the government robbed Peter to pay Paul, is what they're doing here. So you've got the SDI program, and we're siphoning off programs from the Star Wars program to fund these other black aerospace programs that have still not been declassified. I think it checks out. I think it, and we can set a precedence. We can do some paperwork and digging and check into this. And I think I will go to the Reagan Library and drill down into SDI. Like, where did the funding go? What other programs did SDI fund? We know that a lot of billions of dollars in research and development funding was procured and sent into this program. What other things as an offshoot program were funded under SDI? That's what I want to find out. Okay, so Time Magazine, April 4th, 1983. Defending Defense, Budget Battles in Star Wars. So here's the beginning of this Reagan buildup. This is checking out with what Ed's talking about and his sources, that yes, billions of R&D went into this. The question is, was some of that money siphoned off to fund these other programs? Let's continue on here. Abilene Reporter, News, March 5th, 1990. Rumors flying about Mach 5 spy planes. So here we've got 1990. Let's continue on here. The Mach 5 hypersonic reconnaissance spy plane was not called the Aurora. Let me repeat this. The Mach 5 hypersonic reconnaissance spy plane was not called the Aurora. Now, how do we know this? Okay. Because if we go into Ben Rich's book, Skunk Works, and we drill down a little bit here, let's see what Ben has to say about this. The funding for the competition came out of a secret stash in the Air Force budget. A young colonel working in the Air Force Black Program Office at the Pentagon named Buzz Carpenter arbitrarily assigned the funding the code name Aurora. Somehow, this name leaked out during congressional appropriations hearings. The media picked up the Aurora item in the budget, and the rumor surfaced that it was a top secret project assigned to the Skunk Works to build America's first hypersonic airplane. The story persists to this day, even though Aurora was the code name for the B-2 competition funding. Although I expect few in the media to believe me, there is no code name for the hypersonic plane because it simply does not exist. So what Ben is telling us is that the code name Aurora was the procurement funding for the ATB stealth bomber competition. That's what's talking about here. Let's continue on. Codename Aurora was actually referred to their procurement funding for the ATB stealth bomber competition, which eventually ended up being the B-2 stealth bomber. Let's continue on here. Now, this is from the desk of Ronald Blackburn, okay? I won't read all of this here, but there's some interesting points that I want to highlight here. And if you look on the right column, it says US UFOs, green streaks, and the black budget. Okay, let's continue on. Speeds like a flying saucer. Next, General Tony Tolan, who flew F-117s in the Gulf War, said Pentagon spending for secret airplanes is needed, and there, quote, there are other black programs. Meanwhile, the Air Force officially denies any such aircraft exists, has said that 50% of all UFOs will turn out to be U.S. super secret aircraft. So here we've got F-117 pilot talking about other black programs going on. I wonder if some of those programs could be funded from the SDI program from Ronald Reagan Star Wars. Is that a possibility? Let's go on here. The SR-75 went operational after 2 years of flight testing in 1989. This is all from Edgar Fouche's original presentation. The SR-75 is a hypersonic strategic reconnaissance mothership. It can deploy its smaller parasitic aircraft space plane, which can be anywhere in the world in under 2 hours. The space plane carries multispectral optical, radar, infrared, and laser. Okay, let's continue. The bottom of the aircraft stands 10 feet off the ground. The SR-75 utilizes 2 methane LOX high bypass turbo ramjets under each wing. Width is 98 feet. Speed Mach 5. First flight 1987. Length 162 feet. Altitude 120,000 feet. First operational 1989. Pilot, electronics, weapons, and launch control officer, reconnaissance officer. So you've got 3 people up on the front of these, and it's the launch control officer who sits facing backwards, and he's the liaison between the mothership and the parasitic aircraft. Let's continue on here. This is another one of the slides from Edgar Fouche's presentation, SR-75. The parasitic aircraft that sits on top of the mothership is called the XR-7 scramjet and rocket propulsion. The smaller space plane launches satellites for the National Security Agency that weighs 2,000 pounds. So here's John Andrews' model, and what he's showing is his concept for a parasitic aircraft that sits atop the mothership. So you've got this 2-stage to orbit space plane system that John Andrews has designed here. One of Ed's friends claims to have seen the SR-75 XR-7 at Groom Lake. He also claimed that the development for the aerospace system dated back to 1975. Let's go do a quick check-in. Cloudy with a chance of UFOs. Evening, Michael. Hope you're well. Roger. So the SR-71 is the Aurora. No, the SR-71 is not the Aurora. What did you think of Edgar's book, Alien Rapture? I thought it was a good book. I thought there was more that could be done, but generally a good book. All right, let's continue on here. Evansville Press, November 4th, 1993. Model maker unveils new stealth spy plane. Defense group denies real one exists. So here you've got John Andrews, and he's highlighting his great model here, and you see the parasitic aircraft coming on top. So right around the same time frame, Ed's getting this information. He's putting 2 and 2 together, and now we've got evidence suggesting that there is, in point of fact, a 2-stage to orbit space plane system. Let's continue on here. Another good shot of John Andrews with the mothership. I really miss this guy, and so does Jim Goodall. These two were great friends, and they were friends for decades. So I want to tip my hat to John Andrews, who started all this research. Let's continue on here. Here's SR-75 with XR-7 Thunder Dart, designed by John Andrews. And this is really great shot. So you can see the forward chine section. You've got the canards up in front. They can be swept back for high-speed flight. You've got the pilot. You've got the co-pilot. You've got the launch control officer. He's the liaison between the mothership and the parasitic aircraft. You've got these 16-foot tall winglets coming up from the Delta configuration, and then this pylon where the parasitic aircraft sits on top. Let's continue on. This is a 3/4 aft view, and we'll continue. 3/4 aft view. This is at eye level, and you can see these massive ports off the back here. And we'll do one more. This is John McNeil. This is very early illustration. What I'm seeing here, and the information that I'm getting, is that it looks like there were 2 systems. There was one where they had the parasitic aircraft sitting on the top of the aircraft. And then there was another one where the craft was airdropped from the bottom of the belly of the mothership. That appears to be what may be going on here. Let's continue on here. How do we know this? Well, here's Aviation Week Space Technology, March 6, 2006. I want to give credit to Bill Scott, who had been tracking this story for 16 years. He finally put enough evidence together to write this article, and it was an absolute bombshell. Went all the way around the world. So I want to give credit to Bill Scott for this. Here's John Andrews' drawing of the mothership for the SR-75, and you can see the different fuselage stations, the locations. He's got kind of a front view here. This just shows you some of the layout of the craft itself. This highlights the parasitic aircraft sitting on top. Now take a look at that sharp leading edge, okay? If you're screaming by at Mach 8, would you have such a pointed edge? I think we want to modify this. I think we need a little bit more of a blunt nose configuration, because you're going to have that whole leading edge burn off at Mach 8, Mach 12. So just going over some of the configurations here. Let's continue on. So here's the top view looking down. We've got a side view here. This is another John Andrews drawing, and he did a great job, so I want to give credit to John Andrews. Let's continue on. This highlights the configuration. He's got these ramjets up on front with these inlets that probably move forward and aft, just like the A-12 and the SR-71. Let's continue on here. John Andrews with stealth fighter model from People magazine. Alone and without stealth, John Andrews makes child's play of the Pentagon's most secret weapon. So this is in the mid-80s time frame where the whole rage was about stealth aircraft. John pieced this story together from eyewitness testimony, from Aviation Week Space Technology, from Jane's Defense Weekly. He was looking at trade publication. He knew that there was a stealth fighter being tested, which was Have Blue, 1977 at Groom Lake. And he started piecing this together. He knew that this was a low radar cross-section configuration. It had tricycle landing gear. It had twin inward-kinded vertical stabilizers. It had to fit within the cargo bay of a C-5 Galaxy. So when he put that all together, he came up with this model, and it went ballistic. They had congressional hearings where they had this model on display, and people were saying, how can a model builder figure out about what's going on here? And we as congressmen and senators, we don't have a need to know about these black programs. And when that congressional hearing went public, this model sold over 1 million copies. So it was the highest production purchased model in all of history, essentially, right under the General Lee. Let's continue on. Tempest in a toy box. The stealth fighter is so secret that Pentagon won't admit it exists. John Andrews shocked everyone by building a model of it. To tell the truth, he says it wasn't all that much trouble. Los Angeles Times, October 19th, 1986. So here's John Andrews in his office, in his element. And I certainly miss this gentleman. He was of the highest caliber, and we owe him so much gratitude. Let's continue on. Here's Jim Goodall and friends John Andrews. So these two are just the best of friends. And John was such a great gentleman, and Jim Goodall is my good father figure. Let's continue on here. So putting all the information that we got together from everything that Bill Scott put together, all of his paperwork, all of his documentation, all of his newspaper clippings, his sighting reports, I put this drawing together based on Bill Scott's information and all his resources. I'm just going to rip through this real quick. We'll look on the left-hand side. Now, this is the Black Star two-stage to orbit space plane system. So if you look on the upper left, you've got pogo landing gear. You've got a stubby vertical stabilizer. You've got these exhaust grates coming off the back. You've got two what look like shotgun shells that you can load in a solid rocket booster. Okay, let's go off to the right side, front view. You've got these spoilers. That's talked about. I've also included the pogo landing gear legs. We've got folding wingtips. Now, if we go to the left top view, you'll see there's this protective thermal section on the leading edge. That's something that's talked about. You've got the Q bay for satellites. You've got rods from God. This is depleted uranium rounds that don't have any type of warhead. It's just by velocity alone they can take out. So you've got 4 linear aerospike engines. This is still on the top view. Now, looking on the bottom view, you've got thermal ablasive thermal protective tiles taken directly off the space shuttle. That's talked about. On the bottom of the space plane, it looks just like the space shuttle. Now, there are chines or grooves that are milled into the bottom of this thing by McDonnell Douglas. They were subcontracting out for the overall contractor. Now, one of the witnesses said that some tiles were missing. This would be on the right wing. On the bottom here, it looks like it's on the left wing, but that's actually on the right wing. So side view on the bottom, you've got the Q bay, you've got the seat ejection system. That stubby vertical stabilizer was covered with a tarp when it was seen by a transient F-15 pilot. I've also got the skids here on the bottom, and then we've got the solid rocket booster that is loaded like a shotgun shell into the aft ports of the parasitic aircraft. So this is my kind of 3-view drawing here. Let's continue on here. Now we want to go to the mothership, and we'll do a quick check-in here. Flubber Lane, good to see you. Brendan Harding, yes. Rods from God, yes. His Highness, go to New York City, A-12 Blackbird on deck of the Intrepid. Yes, I've been there, and yes, very good. Continue on. So here's the mothership for the two-stage to orbit spaceplane, known as the SR-3. Now, the smaller plane was known as the XOV, Experimental Orbiter Vehicle. This is the SR-3. Looked like the vintage XB-70 from the 1960s. We'll go over this here. So we've got specifications, carrier for XOV, wingspan 120 feet, length 200 feet, max speed Mach 6, power plant, this is key, 6 General Electric J93 variable cycle pulse detonation wave engines, range 6,000 miles, ceiling 150,000 feet, first flight 1988, weight 275,000 to 300,000 pounds, white, gray, black, number built 2, question, operator CIA NRO, contractor Boeing Rockwell International. So if you look on my top view, you can see these canards that retract. Now, I've got multiple witnesses that said that not only do these canards retract, but they have winglets on them. And I know this is true. I spoke to a witness who absolutely saw winglets on the canards. The whole craft is white in color. It has kind of this black leading edge. Let's go to my views on the left here. And what I've done is I've done a cross-section view where I've actually dug into the bottom of this thing, allowing a cavity for the parasitic aircraft to sit up inside. So if you look at my side view, I've got view AA. That takes you to the bottom view, and that shows you where the parasitic aircraft actually sits inside. So again, pilot, co-pilot, launch control officer, and there's a dorsal ridge that runs along the length of the top of the craft. Let's continue on here. So I want to give credit to Mark McCandlish. He did a great job on this. I asked him to do a 3/4 front view looking on the bottom of the aircraft. Again, credit goes to Mark McCandlish, and the estate of Mark McCandlish gets credit for this. And what you see here is the massive SR-3 mothership. And what we're looking at here is a massive air intake splitter, kind of like the XB-70, that divides off into the 6-pack. So you've got 3 on one side, 3 on the other side of the center line. You've got these 16-foot tall winglets. You've got the sections that are dark in color along the leading edge and on the chine. You've got the winglets, and then he's got the parasitic aircraft being airdropped from the belly of the mothership. So credit goes to Mark McCandlish. Let's continue on. Here is Thomas Bogan. He did a really great job. Now, this is via transient F-15 pilot, speedy unloading at Holloman Air Force Base, February 14th, 1994. Now, something happened. Something absolutely happened at Kadena Air Force Base. There was a mishap. There was a malfunction where the parasitic aircraft rammed up against the belly of the mothership. It made an emergency landing at Kadena Air Force Base, loaded into a C-5, and flown all the way back to Holloman Air Force Base. So this is February 14th, 1994. And if you see here, you've got the linear aerospike engines off the back of it. You've got the shotgun shells ports for the SRBs. You've got the outrigger landing gear legs. And then you've got this tarp partially covering the stubby vertical stabilizer. That's what was talked about from eyewitnesses who saw this thing being unloaded at Holloman Air Force Base. Let's continue on. So I took all the information together, the drawings, the sketches, the newspaper clippings, the sighting reports, everything from Bill Scott, sent it all the way over to the Philippines, and they came up with this model that I commissioned them to do. And I want to credit them. They did a great job. This is factory direct models for us, so it's a shout out to them. So you've got the white color, you've got the air intake, you've got the darkened leading edge, you've got winglets on the canards, pilot, co-pilot, launch control officer. Let's do another view here. This is a 3/4 aft view, kind of looking about a 20-degree look down angle. We've got that chine section. We've got the ridge that runs along the top section of the craft itself, and then these absolutely massive winglets that were seen by multiple eyewitnesses. This is almost a direct side view, but at about a 30-degree look-down angle, and we'll do a couple more here just to give you an idea. Now, I also had them design and build for me the parasitic aircraft, and I specifically asked them to put magnets in both the parasitic aircraft and the mothership. So this thing is magnetically attracted to the bottom of the aircraft, and it actually sits up inside. And they actually have the thermal resistant panels in there. They've got the grooves that are talked about. And if you read Bill Scott's 2006 article on the Dark Star, you'll see that all of this is represented within Bill's article. It's all talked about and highlighted in Bill's article. So this is what the cavity looks like on the mothership. And then I'm going to go one more forward here. And now you can see the parasitic aircraft sitting up inside that cavity here. Okay, so in terms of technology and propulsion systems, the space shuttle is equivalent to the fossilized remains of a T-Rex. Why are we still using solid and liquid rockets? Saturn V, Space Shuttle, SpaceX. So that's a good question. Why are we still using these obsolete liquid rockets, solid rockets? We've got the Saturn V Apollo program. We've got the Space Shuttle. We've got Elon Musk. He's still using liquid rockets. Why is he using liquid rockets? Has he not been clued in? Has he not been read in on black programs and that there are much better and more efficient ways to get into space without using solid and liquid rockets? Has he not been clued in, or are we all being played here? Let's continue on. Check in here. Hadley Scott, hey, Epic Info, Boston Deadhead. Ivan Lar, found Michael through Richard Dolan's podcast. Great work he's doing. Let's see, Tomorrow Starship. Okay, so let's get back to Edgar's presentation here. Now, there are two versions of the TR-3B. The prototype measures 200 feet across. The production version measures 600 feet across. The TR-3B is a high-altitude stealth reconnaissance platform. This is all from Edgar Fouche's presentation. Next one. The code name for the TR-3B is called the Astra. This terminology dates back to the ancient Sanskrit texts of ancient India. That I thought was interesting. Let's continue on here. The first flight of the TR-3B was in the early 1990s. The craft is nuclear powered, and funding was procured from President Reagan's SDI or Star Wars program. So I'm highlighting this again. According to Edgar Fouche and his sources, the funding for the TR-3B program came from Reagan's Star Wars program, the SDI program. Let's continue on. By 1994, there were 3 operational models built at the cost of $1 billion each. So is that where the money went? Some of the money from SDI? Did that get funneled into this TR-3B program? The TR-3B's outer coating is reactive to electrical radar simulation and can change reflectiveness, radar absorptiveness, and color. The polymer skin, when used in conjunction with electronic countermeasures, can trick radar receivers. Ooh, so now we're talking about radar invisible stealth, radar absorptiveness, and color. So now we're on a different level completely here. The circular plasma field accelerator ring, called a magnetic field disruptor, or MFD, surrounds a rotatable crew compartment. Sandia and Livermore Laboratories developed the reverse engineering magnetic field disruptor, or MFD. So here, I think, is a very critical Rosetta Stone slide. Here he's talking about Sandia and Livermore Laboratories as being laboratories that reverse engineer the propulsion system. That's key. So what other top secret classified propulsion systems did these 2 national laboratories work on? We need to drill down on these 2 organizations. What is their real history? What programs were they working on, let's say, mid-1980s to mid-1990s that we don't know about? were they actually involved in the reverse engineering propulsion systems that went into the TR-3B? We need to drill down on this. The plasma in the accelerator is mercury-based and is pressurized to 250,000 psi at a temperature of 150 degrees Kelvin, which is minus 189 degrees Fahrenheit, and accelerated at 60,000 RPM to create a superconductive plasma with a resulting gravity energy. The TR-3B utilizes one multi-mode thruster mounted on each corner. So just giving you background of how this thing actually works here. The MFD generates a magnetic vortex field, which disrupts and neutralizes the effects of gravity on mass within proximity by up to 89%. With the vehicle's mass reduced by 89%, it can travel at speeds up to Mach 9 vertically or horizontally. So if you're reducing the way that gravity affects on mass, you're also reducing your G-forces. So pilots can make these absolutely incredible high G turns, and they're really only feeling 11% of the Gs. That's how they can get away with it. So when you see these UFOs making these 90-degree turns at 40 Gs, it's no problem using the magnetic field disruptor. Let's continue on here. We'll do a quick check-in. Let's see. Custodian file dragon, inertia. Would the centric force like a gyro interfere with the movement? Fast to us, but slow to them. Okay, let's continue. The mass of the circular accelerator and all the mass within the accelerator, crew compartment, avionics, MFD systems, fuel, environmental systems, and nuclear reactor are reduced by 89%. So yes, within this field, the crew compartment, the avionics, the MFD systems, fuel, that's reduced by 89%. So that's how they're getting away with this. And I'm sure they're employing this technology in more than one configuration. Let's continue. So I posed a 20-question flyer to Edgar Fouche, and I asked him all these different questions, and he actually replied. I can't believe it. He actually replied. He's no longer with us, but I sent him a list of 20 questions. He answered all of them, and I'm going to rip through these real quick. This is a little bit labor intensive and text intensive, but I just want to get this all down on video for historical purposes, and we'll rip through these quickly here. Who is the primary contractor for the TR-3B? Edgar Fouche. Lockheed, Boeing, Northrop, Teledyne Ryan, managed by NRO, NSA, and CIA. There were a number of major defense contractors involved to keep different parts of the R&D compartmentalized. 2, what company was responsible for building the propulsion system MFD on the TR-3B? He didn't answer this one. I don't know if he missed it, but for some reason he didn't answer this one. 3, what was the date of the first flight of the prototype for the TR-3B? They built a lot of different prototypes from the early 1970s on. I believe the first gravity warping vehicle, Triangle, was flown in the early 1970s. 4, how many different sizes of the TR-3B were built? Approximately 250 feet for the prototype, and 3 were flying before 1994. The operational model was supposed to be 600 feet. Never saw a large production model, only saw them over Edwards Air Force Base, Air Force Flight Test Center, and Nevada. What military facility were these craft being kept? Other than Groom, it's probably kept underwater or in the Antarctic, don't know. So here we've got possible USO. Yeah, you could store them there. What is the overall mission of the TR-3B? Logistics support and transportation for the secret space program. If used on a planet, moon, or large outpost, you would have a ready-made transportable space station. Oh yeah, absolutely. Let's continue on. Does the TR-3B carry any weapon systems on board? I have no knowledge of its weapon systems, but the 3-letter agencies in the military love adding weapons. How many crew members are on board during a typical mission? I believe it was a minimum of 4 for the prototype. Please explain how the magnetic field disruptor works. See below. How is the craft capable of making 40G turns and abrupt stops? Ask Warren. So Warren was a friend who was a great physicist and mathematician. What type pilots fly the TR-3B, Air Force or contractor? Both, but the military pilots are Navy and U.S. Air Force and graduates of their own test pilot school, like Air Force Flight Test Center at Edwards Air Force Base. Many astronauts were the top test pilots in our military, the top 1% for sure. What type of navigation system is used on the TR-3B? Advanced in Atmosphere Nav Systems, Celestial and Star System Navigation Systems, C3 systems. Of course, it would have double or triple communications, navigation, IR, ILS, TACON, radar, ECM, electronic countermeasures, and ECCM systems. What type of flight control system is used on the TR-3B? Variable vectored intake and thrusters on the edges, and advanced multi-mode propulsion engines on each tip of the triangle. Let's continue on. What type of power sources of the craft? Okay, 2 nuclear reactors. So you've got the magnetic field disruptor, and then you've got 2 nuclear reactors flying over our American cities and the world during the Reagan administration and beyond. What type of materials used to build the TR-3B? Advanced composites, metamaterials, and titanium. So here's this metamaterial pops up again. How many total TR-3Bs were built? Prototype, at least 3. Don't know about operational model or many variants that have come since. Was the TR-3B the same craft that was seen over Belgium in 1989 and Southern Illinois in 2000? I believe it was the final prototype, or perhaps earlier R&D FOTE and model. So here you've got Ed stating that the Belgium Triangle Wave, 1989-1990, was the TR-3B. 18, what is the total cost per each TR-3B? In 1990 dollars, it would have been about $1 billion. I assume the operational model would be 3 or 4 times that. Does the TR-3B have a payload bay? Never noticed one, but obviously they would have different egress and ingress points. Has the TR-3B been flown outside our solar system? Wouldn't even venture a guess. Why not? How is the TR-3B capable of exceeding the speed of sound without causing a sonic boom? I believe it's the ionic electrical discharge and warping of the gravity that allows that. And we'll continue on here. Please describe what was the early prototype look like when you first saw it in a military hangar. Was the date when you saw the TR-3B? 1975, high in the atmosphere at Edwards during the night. 1976, within the southern part of the Nellis Range. Late 1970s at Groom Air Base. The schematic you have on my 3rd triangle drawing are fairly accurate. I was told that the operational model had different engines on the tips, that they had eliminated the rotatable crew compartment. So here you've got Ed talking about flying triangles going on in 1975. That's a lot earlier than we all thought. 23, what is the exterior color of the craft? It has a stealth electrochromatic coating that can change its color and electronic signature. Please describe the landing gear on the TR-3B. The only one I saw on the ground used 3 tripads with T-pads, no wheels. What government agency is responsible for operating the TR-3B? NRO, NSA, CIA. Was Kelly Johnson the senior project design engineer on the TR-3B? I had to get that one in. No, it would have been Ben Rich. Let's go on. 27. Does the TR-3B emit any low-frequency electrical humming noises during operation? When we were bike riding in the high desert of the Nellis Range, it made a very slight magnetic hum. It also made the hair on our bodies stand up. It was right over our heads and was pretty much silent. Yeah, that's exactly what witnesses described. 28, are there any lights on the TR-3B? Yes, each tip on the triangle. The MFD on the prototype gave out a large diffused light in the bottom center of it. Please describe how the multi-mode rockets operate and who the prime contractor was for the 3 rockets on the bottom of the craft. See below. 30, does the craft incorporate any type of visual stealth technology which would hide it from view? Most likely, since there are electrochromatic coating can change color. Of course, we have developed several types of invisibility since the operational model. The one was saw high up in the atmosphere after dark got bigger and bigger as it descended. Also, the stars were blocked out above the triangle. 31 and 32. What was the purpose of the vents on the side? Variable vectored intake exhaust depend on which direction the vehicle is going. Wouldn't the directional thrust by jet engines on board the craft be negated by the MFD since they are in close proximity? The MFD is not anti-gravity, so I don't see why it would interfere. Okay, now we'll wrap this up with this section right here. How does the magnetic field disruptor work? Honestly, how does this thing actually work here? Sandia and Livermore laboratories developed the reverse engineered MFD technology. So key, those two laboratories. The government will go to any lengths to protect this technology. The plasma, mercury-based, is pressurized at 250,000 atmospheres at a temperature of 150 degrees Kelvin and accelerated to 50,000 RPM to create a superconductive plasma with the resulting gravity disruption. The MFD generates a magnetic vortex field which disrupts or neutralizes the effects of gravity on mass within the proximity by 89%. Do not misunderstand. This is not anti-gravity. Anti-gravity provides a repulsive force that can be used for propulsion. The MFD creates a disruption of the Earth's gravitational field upon the mass within the circular accelerator. The mass of the circular accelerator and all mass within the accelerator, such as the crew compartment, the avionics, the MFD systems, fuel, crew, environmental systems, and the nuclear reactor are reduced by 89%. This causes the effect of making the vehicle extremely light and able to outperform and outmaneuver any craft yet constructed, except, of course, those UFOs that we didn't build. So I'm just tying this all together, how this thing works. What's the propulsion system? Who are the contractors? What is the capability, the performance capability? What Edgar is describing here outpaces anything that you would see at your local air show. It outpaces most all black programs. This is the deepest black program, the crown jewels of the military industrial complex. Let's continue on here. Propulsion system. The TR-3B propulsion system is provided by 3 multi-mode thrusters mounted at each bottom corner of the triangular platform. The TR-3B is a sub-Mach 9 vehicle until it reaches altitudes above 120,000 feet. Then God knows how fast it can go. The 3 multi-mode rocket engines mounted under each corner of the craft use hydrogen or methane and oxygen as their propellant. In a liquid oxygen-hydrogen rocket system, 85% of the propellant mass is oxygen. The nuclear thermal rocket engine uses a hydrogen propellant augmented with oxygen for additional thrust. The reactor heats the liquid hydrogen and injects liquid oxygen in the supersonic nozzle so that the hydrogen burns concurrently in the liquid oxygen afterburner. The multi-mode propulsion system can operate in the atmosphere with thrust provided by the nuclear reactor, in the upper atmosphere with hydrogen propulsion, and in orbit with the combined hydrogen-oxygen propulsion. Now I want to check in here. Boston Dead had very interesting, a spider and frog levitated in a gigantic magnetic field. B2 Spirit. Let's continue on. Additional comments by Edgar Fouche. Quote, all those people speculating about how this is impossible because of the use of a nuclear power are missing the claim that nuclear power is not used for thrust, but for modifying the mass of the vehicle. That is assuming the claim is true. So the nuclear power source is only used to supply electricity by a turbine or thermiotic generation or both, which is then used to electrically accelerate a plasma to relativistic speeds. In principle, everything suggested is plausible, although no known materials would allow actual building of a toroid enclosed strong enough to withstand the forces involved before breaking apart. Notice I said known materials. Who knows what secret classified materials may exist and what other missing pieces of the puzzle there could be. So here he's talking about a magnetic field that's used to contain the rotating plasma. That's what's talking about here. This covers the period when I was stationed at Nellis Air Force Base between 1976 to 1979. In August 1979, I was still on temporary duty under the orders of Detachment 3 of Edwards Air Force Base. This was pretty much the whole summer. So this is Edgar Fouche's notes here. The assignment location was Groom Air Base, part of Area 51. TDY personnel didn't have the privileges of permanent party assignment personnel. I was always under observation and or under guard, even when I had to use the latrine, and there were no doors on the toilets. I worked on several systems related to satellite communications and crypto during the summer. This is detailed during my presentation at IUFOC back in 1998, when I first disclosed publicly about my 20-year career in the U.S. Air Force. I always went up on a darkened out blue U.S. Air Force bus from Nellis Air Force Base in the early morning and came back in the late evening after dark. In addition to working at Groom Air Base that summer, I was also at a facility that was called Defense Advanced Research Center, or DARC, which was underground facility. It is more classified than Groom Air Base. That's another thing we need to drill down on. What is this DARC? Who was involved in building the facility? What do they build there? What contractors are involved there? It was either southeast or south of Groom Air Base and was not Papoose Dry Lake Bed, which has, by the way, never had any facilities on it, parking lots, lights, etc., as described by Lazar. The real S4 is part of the Tonopah facilities. And this is just what Edgar Fouche is saying here. One evening, it was getting dark. I was at the engineering test of avionics building, which I believe was called Building 9. However, as we came out of the back side of the building, our bus was waiting outside for us. The TDY personnel had to wear darkened out black goggles so we couldn't see things we weren't supposed to. I had a habit of slightly pulling my goggles down a bit so I could peer out and see above the goggles. On this specific occasion, as I was walking toward the bus, I noticed off in the distance a very large 200 to 250 foot triangular vehicle and was startled. It appeared to be dark gray with a copper-like haze that caused it to shimmer a little. At the angle I viewed it, I'm 100% positive it was a perfect triangle with rounded corners, much like the VIX cough drop. It did not have landing gear wheels. It was a tripod T-pad type support. I could see about 2/3 of the triangle vehicle. It wasn't until several years I found out a lot more of detail of what was then designated the TR-3B Astra. There were no markings that I could see or vertical horizontal stabilizers. I glimpsed at it for just a few seconds. I was absolutely stunned by what I saw, and I had seen a lot of things in my career in 2 tours of Vietnam. For a long while, I thought the TR stood for Tactical Reconnaissance and is the common designation used by the U.S. Air Force. I'm of the opinion that the TR stood for Teledyne Ryan. The TR-3B was not a second version of the TR-3A or the TIR series of aircraft. The primary purpose of the TR-3B is as a space platform for our top secret space fleet. After Popular Science magazine false article about the triangle blimp, which was done for disinformation, and the fact that we have many deltoid-shaped aircraft flying around in the world, it's been quite confusing for people to know the truth, especially since the DoD spends so much money and resources on disinformation, propaganda, and psyops. At the end of my TDY at Groom Air Base, I received an out-of-cycle airman's performance report called a Form 77A. I believe many of my military documents and videos are on the internet. Okay, and we'll just do a couple more here. My primary career was on avionics, automatic test equipment, computer-controlled satellite communications, electronic countermeasures, and crypto NSA. I had 13 or 14 different Air Force specialty codes during my career. I was handpicked cadre for several versions of the F-111, the F-15, the F-16, the original B-1, the A-10, the B-52. I had over 4,000 hours of training in specialty schools, of which About half were top secret. I also had factory training at Macair, General Dynamics, Bendix, Lockheed, and other DoD contractors. And this is all the background of Edgar Fouche here. On these aircraft and on other Air Force SCs, I had performed as research and development, R&D, flight operations, test and evaluation, site activation, fielding, and new aircraft squadrons until operational. After completion of installation of a TS satellite communications command post for the SAC U.S. Air Force on the Canadian border at a top secret dispersion base, I was assigned an office at a regular U.S. Air Force depot at Kelly Air Force Base in San Antonio, Texas. I started off as a strategic air command liaison to industry DoD, and it rapidly changed to DoD liaison to the defense industry. The last 15 years of my career, I mostly worked directly for full colonels and generals. My last 7 years, I worked and reported to a 2-star general who I rarely saw. We were in different states, fun stuff. I retired in 1987 and was hired by SAIC as a senior project manager. I was 38. I also worked for CEA, PCA, SSAI, and was a consultant to several other DoD contractors. After 1996, I had no direct employment with the DoD or the military defense industry, which President Eisenhower Ike called the military industrial complex. So in a nutshell, that is Edgar Fouche's background here. Let's continue on here. So I asked Ed to draw me a map of actually how he saw this TR-3B, and he did. Here is his original map. So what you see here is him getting out of the avionics building, which is building 9, walking over to the blue-colored bus that he talks about. So he's walking toward the bus. He's got his foggles on. There was a little bit of a crack, so he looked off to the left. And I'm just gauging by the length here between the bus and where you see building 32, and just off to the right, you've got that triangle. At a minimum, that's about 500 feet. That's minimum 500. That's more like 600 feet or even more. But this is how Edgar Fouche stated that he saw the TR-3B at Area 51. This is his original map that he drew for me. And I'll do a blow up here. So if you look at the bus, you go directly northbound, you've got building 32, just to the right of that building 32. Now you can see the TR-3B. This is all according to Edgar Fouche. Let's continue on here. Email. So is there any supporting evidence for any of this? Do we have any other sources that could actually support Edgar Fouche's claim? So I've got this, I won't tell you who this came from, but this is May 22nd, 2018. The TR-3B were designed and built by Lockheed Martin Aerospace Group and Northrop Grumman Aerospace Group. The landing gears, nose, and mains were designed and developed by Goodrich Landing Gear Company, formerly Cleveland Pneumatic Company. I worked for DoD prior to retirement. I was a GS 1910s-11/12 Quality Assurance Specialist. In other words, I am a government inspector to verify their quality control for their end product prior to installing on any and all aircraft. Over 90% plus their workload was military hardware, such as F-22 Raptor, F-35 Lightning II, and the big kid on the block, the Venture Star spacecraft. The quantity as well as their propulsion system is classified beyond my pay grade. So here we've got a secondary source talking about the contractors that were involved and the landing gear developed by Goodrich Landing Gear Company. So this is supporting evidence for Edgar Fouche. Now, what other evidence do we have in the form of eyewitness testimony to these triangle-shaped UFOs? This is May 5th, 2003, Helena, Missouri. This is the original sketch by the primary eyewitness. Now, I dug this out of QFOS, Center for UFO Studies. This is, it's been 15 years ago since I dug this out. And it was just sitting in the archives. And this is 2457 West Peterson Avenue, downtown Chicago area. Not going to go over everything here, but I want to highlight some of his call outs here. Again, this is May 5th, 2003, Helena, Missouri. He says, this looked like old rivets from old bridge, rusty rivets. He talks about steel, crossbeam and girder construction. And then he says, this UFO on March 5th, 2003 in Helena, Missouri at 9:50 p.m., it made pictures fall off my living room wall and shook the whole house. So here you've got this massive craft flying over, 1 football field in length. It's got crossbeam and girder construction. It's got rusty rivets holding this thing together. Folks, we're not talking about an alien spacecraft here. We're talking about a man-made technology. Let's continue on here. Here's my AutoCAD drawing that gives you an idea of what these rivets look like. It had a catwalk. It had a glass frame. And you can see all the callouts for all these rivets. This is not an alien spacecraft. This is man-made technology. It looks like these truss bridges that you see when you go over. All these cross beams and V-shapes, triangles, gussets, and we've got rivets. That's exactly what the eyewitnesses are describing here. All of these rivets are what the witnesses are talking about here. Let's continue on. Here's my cardstock model that shows you what these craft look like. Let's continue on. November 22nd, 1985, 15 miles northwest of Madison, Wisconsin. Here's what the eyewitness said here. The underside of the craft resembled, quote, the back of a refrigerator, like a collection of condensation pipes that ran back and forth. That's what they're saying here. Craft was seen by a Wisconsin state employee hovering silently over Highway CV 15 miles northwest of Madison, Wisconsin. The object was approximately 40 feet across and 90 feet in length. According to the eyewitness, the underside of the craft resembled, quote, the back of a refrigerator, like a collection of condensation pipes that ran back and forth. After gliding over the witness's vehicle, the craft departed at a tremendous speed and left no sonic boom. So here we have 1985. This is tracking exactly what Edgar Fouche is talking about. Exactly. So I asked the question, is this what you would expect to see on the bottom of an extraterrestrial spacecraft? No, no, no. This is man-made technology here. Let's continue on here. Now we move on to the Southern Illinois Triangle. This is January 5th, 2000. We've got multiple police officers in at least 3 different counties talking about arrowhead, triangular shaped. We've got one that looked like a 2-store ranch with a penthouse on top. That was also described. And then we've got this bottom understructure on these Southern Illinois flying triangles. Let me go here. The bottom of the craft resembled building blocks with plumbing pipes. Shiloh, Illinois police officer David Martin. Is this what you would expect to see on the bottom of an alien spacecraft? Let's do a quick check-in here. If the U.S. have craft like this, I wonder what the Russians and Chinese have. Well, they probably have their own craft, but probably not as good as ours. Musk has his work cut out for him. Yeah, he does. Let's see here. Hadley Scott, my sister moved from North Ireland by airport, UK owned. Okay, let's continue on. Triangle craft seen by Millstead police officer Craig Stevens. And what I'm doing here is I'm just giving supporting evidence for Edgar Fouche's claim that there is in point of fact a TR-3B flying triangle. So this is Officer Craig Stevens here. Republic Times, January 12, 2000. What is shaped like an arrowhead as big as a football field, 2 stories tall, and flies slowly through the air? If you don't know, don't feel bad. People across the Metro East saw an object fitting that description float slowly overhead early last Wednesday morning, and no one yet has been able to explain what it is. Well, I think we have a better idea of what this thing actually is here. Collinsville Journal, January 16, 2000. Object in sky draws interest of UFO researchers. Officer says he is 98% sure object was experimental or military. This thing was huge. It was moving like a blimp from south at about 500 to 1,000 feet above the ground. I could only hear a very low decibel buzzing sound. Here we've got Officer Craig Stevens, and he's saying that he's 98% sure this is military. He's not saying this is extraterrestrial or alien. This is one of ours. He's 98% sure of it. Now, if you look at the drawings by Craig Stevens, that brings us to my AutoCAD drawing. And what he was saying here is, let me give you his direct quote. Quote, "The craft tried to camouflage itself against the night sky and was projecting the star field above it on the underside." Officer Craig Stevens. So this is exactly what it was doing. It was using star field camouflage. So I had Rudy do a drawing of his sighting. So you've got Craig Stevens, January 5th, 2000. He looks, he sees this big black triangle, and he could see the constellations on the bottom side. So what was it using? It was using these electrochromatic panels, which were electronically transferring the star field and constellations above it, transferring that on the bottom side, allowing it to blend in with its background. That's exactly what it was doing. And here's Joel's illustration of what it looks like. Just a fantastic job. They've got the technology. They have done it. They made the breakthrough. Let's continue on. So what evidence do we have that these panels do exist? This is Popular Science, May 1997, Invisible Aircraft. This is Triangle UFO model by Tom Jensen, Saturday, January 5th, 2000. This is Union, Missouri. This is what he saw. Now, if we continue further here, you can see the other configurations that were seen and the lights on the bottom of the craft. August 25th, 1990, Barnsley, England. We've talked about this sighting before. This is a 30-year-old retired. He had served in the police force for 30 years, and this is what he described. A massive triangle, a white light at each corner. There was a large light at the center. There was an indented section showing you cross-beam and girder construction. And then he said that there were human figures looking back. I won't go through his whole testimony, but this is what he said. The side of the craft appeared to have several illuminated windows, and I saw 2 to 3 figures that appeared to be human. Certainly nothing about the figures made me think they were anything other than human, reinforcing my belief that the craft was a military project. So he, along with Craig Stevens, believes it was a military project. This is my cardstock model that gives you an idea of what that craft looks like. We'll continue on here. This is a top view looking down, 45-degree look down angle. Here's Joseph Race full color rendering. This gives you an idea of what this thing may have looked like according to the primary eyewitness. And you can see this cross beam and girder construction that this police officer described. This is the blow up of these military personnel that were seen in this large window according to the primary eyewitness. So Belgium Triangle sighting. This is November 29th, 1989. Sun, July 23rd, 1991. UFO drama, thousands watch in awe. So they're talking about these large triangles, the size of a football field, making these low frequency electrical humming noises. Incredible performance, shining these spotlights down on the eyewitnesses. Exactly like the 1982 to 1989 Hudson Valley boomerang sightings. This is the location of where they were actually seen. So here you've got the map of Belgium here. Let's continue on. Belgian scientists seriously pursue triangle UFOs despite jokes. And this is Wall Street Journal, October 10th, 1990. Since the rash of sightings here began almost a year ago, more than 2,600 have been reported of a triangular object with 3 huge lights hovering in the night sky over Wallonia. This is exactly what Edgar Fouche had talked about with these lights shining down. Let's continue. New York Tribune, November 15th, 1990. The UFO flap in Belgium, among the best documented ever. Thousands of witnesses, including gendarmes, national police, and officers of the Belgian Air Force, have described triangular-shaped vehicles flying slowly over rooftops, hovering beams, searchlights, and performing incredible maneuvers. So here is John McNeil's illustration. I commissioned them to do this for me a long time ago. Now, the F-16 pilots did not get this close, but they did get it on their radar. And eyewitnesses that were directly below this craft, standing below this thing, said they saw a white light at each corner. They could hear a low-frequency electrical humming noise like a sewing machine or a transformer. And they also described this tubes, pipes, and cylinders on the bottom of the craft, identical to the January 5th Southern Illinois Triangle and the 1982 to 1989 Hudson Valley boomerang. So you've got 3 different dates with these pipes and cylinders on the bottom of the craft. Let's continue on here. So here's my drawing that shows you these tubes, pipes, and cylinders. You've got this incredible acceleration going from basically 280 kilometers per hour to 1,800 kilometers per hour, 40 Gs, and this is within seconds. You've got the low frequency electrical humming noise that's talked about by the eyewitnesses. And then on the left-hand upper view here, I've got the F-16 radar screen that was seen by the F-16s. So top view of TR-3B showing crew compartment. This is credit Joseph Wraith. Want to give him credit. We'll do one more view. This is bottom view looking down. This is the magnetic field disruptor and the multi-mode impulse engines. Here's my AutoCAD drawing that shows you the crew compartment. And then on the bottom, I've got the MFD and I've got the multi-mode impulse engines, just showing you kind of a two view. We've got a front view, bottom view, and 3/4 ISO view. And this is my full color rendering, just shows you what the TR-3B looks like in flight. And we'll continue on here. Now, a lot of this technology we know goes back a long way. Now, how far back does it go? If you go back to World War II and you look at the Glocke, the bell, we've talked about this before. We've got the cerium-525, which is a radioactive isotope. You've got the ring on the bottom of the bell. You've got two counter-rotating drums. So here we've got the same type technology that Edgar Fouche is talking about. He's talking about a rotating liquid mercury plasma within a toroid donut, almost identical to the magnetic field disruptor. Now, during operation, the bell emitted a low-frequency buzzing noise similar to a bumblebee in flight. That tracks with the Hudson Valley Boomerang, 1989, 1990. The tracks with the Belgium Triangle, 1990. Tracks with the Southern Illinois Flying Triangle, January 5th, 2000. So I'm just highlighting that eyewitnesses to the other sightings reported the same type buzzing sound as the bell. Now, how far does this go back? If you go to the Sanskrit texts of ancient India, they describe these flying vehicles known as the Vimana that had these liquid mercury vortex plasma engines. And this is like 2,000 years before the time of Christ this is being talked about. So does this technology date back a lot earlier than we previously thought? Now, I want to highlight a world exclusive. This is where all of this is leading up to here. And we'll do a quick check-in here. Awesome renders, excellent presentation. I love your work. Oh, wow, still live. This is a big presentation. Yes, it is. So, ladies and gentlemen, I have a world exclusive for you, and I'm excited to show this to you. Here is the world exclusive. I had Joseph Wraith do for me what I believe the absolute best color renderings of the TR-3B inside a hangar at Area 51. We wanted to stress that this is a man-made technology. This is not an alien technology. This is not ETs flying around. We've got man-made technology built by good old-fashioned American ingenuity. Now, there could be an ET component. We talked about that with Sandia and Lawrence Livermore Laboratories. But what we're seeing flying around regarding the TR-3B that Edgar Fouche talks about is absolutely a man-made technology. So this is inside the hangar at Area 51. This is a 3/4 view looking down at a 45-degree angle. This is a world exclusive. This has never been released before, ever, anywhere on this planet. Maintenance technicians prepare the TR-3B for a test flight at Area 51. And I want to give credit to Joseph Wraith for doing these for me. Thank you, Joseph. Thumbs up. So you can kind of see we've got the support equipment. We might have liquid mercury plasma being pumped into the toroid of the magnetic field disruptor. On this view, you can see the top view of the crew compartment. Now that sits within a gimbal device. So whatever angle of attack that the TR-3B is, the gimbal device allows for the crew compartment to always be sitting level plane. Let's continue on here. This is a side view, direct front. This is a side view at eye level, showing you the bottom of the magnetic field disruptor and the T-pad landing gear that Edgar talks about. This does not have wheels. It has T-pads for the landing gear. So again, I want to give credit to Joseph Wraith. We'll do a quick check-in here. I've been really looking forward to this. The last part was brilliant. Yes. Okay, let's continue on here. Now, we're not done yet. There's always more here, so let's continue on here. We're not done yet. Let me take you through a typical test flight here. So let's take you inside the hangar at Area 51, and we're going to zoom in on this TR-3B. Let's get a little bit closer here. So this is about a 25-degree look-down angle. We're zooming into the TR-3B. You can see all the support equipment. We've got the railing here. We've got pilots getting ready to do a test flight. Again, this is one of ours with our tax dollars from the Reagan administration SDR Star Wars program. One of these craft, procurement R&D funding siphoned off of SDI, was filtered and siphoned and plugged into the TR-3 program via Reagan administration. Okay, we've got the hangar doors opened up. We're getting ready for a test flight. Pilots are in place. We're getting ready to bring this craft out. Now we're outside the hangar and we're getting ready for this thing to actually take off. I'm going to go to the next slide here. And now we're ready for a test. Of course, we've got guards around this thing. This is at Area 51. We're getting ready for our test flight here. We've got some hazmat suits here. This might be for the plasma within the magnetic field disruptor. So we've got some people in hazmat suits. And now the test flight has begun here. So we're at the point where we're starting our test flight. And then as we begin our test flight, of course, I don't want to stop here. I've got one more world exclusive surprise for you here. And we're going to go to the next slide. And we can kind of see this is about a 30-degree look down angle. We've got the control tower. We're outside here. We're going to do one more check-in. Flubber Lane, ready for takeoff. Yes, standing back 5,000 yards. Tom Vernon, UAP, hi, Roger. Yes, okay, so let's go to the next slide here. And we're getting ready for takeoff. We're just about ready for takeoff. We'll go to the next slide. And ladies and gentlemen, I have a world exclusive video for you. I want to credit Joseph Ray. So thank you for all of your attention. This concludes the PowerPoint presentation, but please stand by for the world exclusive video, and we're going to cut to the video. And thank you for your attention, and we will see you on the next one. So stand by for the video. get these guys.